We live in an age that is just absolutely defined by constant productivity. I mean, from our earliest academic achievements right into the thick of our professional lives, we are conditioned to run the proverbial rat race. We're always climbing that ladder, constantly striving for the next big milestone. But what actually happens when that relentless pace finally breaks us down? Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to dive into the architecture of somatic renewal, and we'll look at how specific, scientifically backed practices can actually shift us from a state of chronic exhaustion right into deep, restorative stillness. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the modern burnout epidemic, follow a Marine's transition into wellness, ground these therapies in the neurobiology of eye rest and the biophysics of sound baths, and then wrap up with the deeply human impact of all this advocacy. All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, the modern rat race and the epidemic of burnout. So, far too many adults are finding out the hard way, but simply taking a break or even reaching traditional retirement doesn't really provide true solace. Instead, people are plagued by adrenal fatigue, depression, and anxiety. And you might be wondering, why is that? Well, it's because the mind and body haven't actually learned how to break from the whirlwind. We have to purposefully shift from the chaos of the rat race to the structured architecture of somatic renewal. That's what actively promotes the restoration, focus, and parasympathetic balance we're really looking for. Moving right along to Section 2, a Marine's somatic transition, where we'll explore the solace mind journey. This brings us to Sylvia Feliciano. Her personal journey is really the compelling anchor for all these scientific concepts we're talking about. Sylvia transitioned out of the incredibly high-octane, high-stress environment of the United States Marine Corps. She was feeling unfulfilled by conventional metrics of success, and then, completely unexpectedly, she discovered this profound peace inside a standard yoga studio through a practice called Yoga Nidra. This somatic awakening was a real game changer. It prompted her to found Solace Mind back in 2018. Today, she combines her intense background in crisis response with advanced clinical credentials, working as a clinical mental health counselor in training and a certified crisis intervention specialist. Think about the landscape of mental health care today. On one side, you have digital apps that rely purely on programmed algorithms for emotional containment. On the other side, you've got traditional psychiatric clinics that focus heavily on the pharmacological management of severe diagnoses. Solace Mind uniquely positions itself right in the middle. It's a mid-tier, high-touch platform. It blends trauma-informed peer advocacy with multimodal somatic therapies, which basically means it uses real human connection and physical practices to actively foster nervous system regulation. And the qualitative outcomes absolutely back up this model. Take this lived experience from a client, Maria C. She came in under extreme stress and mental exhaustion, just classic burnout where literally nothing else was working. Through practices like hypnotherapy, she didn't just get a temporary Band-Aid. She was equipped with the actual tools to maintain her peace long-term. Real-world results like this really validate the systemic impact of Sylvia's structured, supportive presence. Now let's explore Section 3, the neurobiology of eye rest and how it literally rewires the brain. Okay, the crucial part here is understanding the hard science behind these outcomes. At the very core of Solace Mind's restorative practice is eye rest yoga nidra. Now, people hear that and think it's just a fancy word for relaxing. Actually, scratch that. It's way more than just relaxing. It's a highly precise 10-step modern adaptation of ancient meditation, developed over 26 years by clinical psychologist Dr. Richard Miller. Unlike traditional yoga, there's absolutely zero physical movement. You lie completely still, and the facilitator guides you into a conscious awareness of the deep sleep state. The protocol relies on some highly structured steps. As a practitioner, you're taught to establish a safe inner resource and set a clear intention. Then, you're guided to focus on your breath and physical sensations, eventually identifying physical opposites, like feeling really hot and then feeling cold. By doing this, patients learn to objectively witness their own experiences. This is absolutely vital for healthcare workers and trauma survivors because it gives them a way to detach from overwhelming emotions, vivid memories, or intrusive images without getting consumed by them. As you move through those 10 steps, a profound biological shift actually happens in your head. Your brain waves physically alter. We all start in the hyperactive, rapid beta state, that constantly engaged, highly stressed frequency of the daily rat race. Eye rest gently guides the brain down through the resting alpha state, plunging you deeply into the meditative theta frequencies and ultimately settling into the incredibly slow delta frequencies, which are associated with deep, restorative, dreamless sleep. The clinical efficacy of shifting your brainwaves like this is just striking. In one residential facility study looking at 148 subjects being treated for chemical dependence, get this,
An incredible 73% of those who completed a 10-week iRest program experienced decreased relapse rates. By learning to create a state of mindfulness, they significantly decrease their negative mood states. And the research extends even further into severe trauma recovery. Studies tracking 16 combat veterans from the Vietnam and Iraq wars showed dramatic reductions in rage, anxiety, and emotional hyperreactivity following iRest. Furthermore, 86% of female veterans with military sexual trauma who participated in a 10-week intervention showed vastly enhanced capacities to cope with psychological stressors. The data is clear. Cumulative dosing of this deep theta state therapy systematically improves both emotional regulation and sleep architecture.
Let's transition to our next topic, Section 4, the biophysics of sound baths and cellular healing. So, you might be wondering, how do instruments like Tibetan singing bowls, gongs, and chimes, which Solace Mind uses heavily, actually trigger a physiological healing response? Is it just nice, relaxing music, or is there something way deeper going on? To answer that, we can look at a systematic review of over 400 published scientific articles. This massive body of research absolutely validates music and sound as medicine. It emphasizes that specific acoustic frequencies act directly on the physical body to induce profound chemical changes, noting that rhythm in particular provides measurable physical pain relief. Let's break down the biophysical process. Step 1. The acoustic vibrations literally stimulate the tactile fibers in your body. Step 2. That sensory input flips the switch on your parasympathetic nervous system. That's your body's crucial rest and digest mode. Step 3. As a direct result, your levels of the stress hormone cortisol drop and your heart rate variability improves. Plus, these frequencies can create what are called binaural beats, which quite literally force your brainwaves to synchronize and step out of those trauma-induced fight or flight states. What is truly incredible about sound therapy is how accessible it is. Clinical evaluations show that just a single 1-hour sound meditation session significantly reduces tension, anger, and fatigue. But here is the best part. It works for both novices and experts alike. Sound healing completely bypasses the need for you to have any prior cognitive meditation training simply because it works immediately on a cellular and biophysical level. Finally, we reach Section 5, Joshua's Light and Resilience, where we look at the deeply human impact of all this. We really have to connect all these cellular and neurological changes back to the real-world application. Sylvia Feliciano's scientific and therapeutic pursuits aren't just academic for her. They are deeply rooted in personal tragedy. The devastating loss of her own son to suicide is what fuels her unyielding dedication to crisis intervention, trauma-informed care, and supporting the military community on a much larger scale. This deeply personal motivation has driven a really powerful timeline of action over the years. From founding Solace Mind in 2018, her advocacy recently birthed the upcoming 2026 Joshua's Light Suicide Awareness and Resilience Scholarship. Through Solace Mind, she's creating life-saving frameworks by partnering with major institutional networks like the Robert Irvine Foundation and their Face the Fight initiative, which works specifically to reduce veteran suicide by promoting secure firearm storage and effective intervention practices. When you combine that empathetic, trauma-informed human connection with the hard, evidence-based somatic practices we've been talking about, the results speak for themselves. An Air Force veteran shared this regarding their programs. The experience was transformative. For the first time, I felt equipped to take back control of my life. That right there is the ultimate goal of somatic renewal, empowering individuals to successfully manage their own physical and psychological well-being. So let's wrap up with the essential takeaways from this explainer. First, combating the burnout of the modern rat race requires so much more than just taking a vacation. It demands structural, biological shifts. Second, practices like iRest Yoga Nidra safely transition our brainwaves down into restorative theta and delta states. Third, the biophysics of sound baths physically lowers stress hormones like cortisol. And finally, platforms like Solace Mind show us the profound impact of blending validated clinical science with deeply personal peer advocacy. We're going to end on a bit of a provocative thought today. Since the science clearly proves that our nervous systems require intentional, vibrational, and cognitive resets to actually heal, if your body holds the physical architecture of your stress, what conscious step will you take today to exit the rat race and find true stillness? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really encourage you to go out and explore these somatic practices for yourself.